welcome to the Beauty Way, and so great to be back on our second episode for the season. And it's such a joy to welcome Raeline. Raeline is somebody that I've been connected to for a little while, not ages in this lifetime, but somehow her and I connected a couple of years ago, and I found out last year that she was running the trip to Egypt, and it resonated so deeply with me, and I found a way. So I went on the epic pilgrimage to Egypt with Raeline as my midwife. And so I love when I asked Raeline just to share a little few pieces about herself. And I knew this about her. She talks of herself as a galactic midwife, which is so beautiful because Raeline has since 1991 been doing grid missions around the world, and so it felt so special for me, even though, because I didn't know her particularly well before I went to Egypt. It felt really special to me to find out that she's been doing these missions for so many years, and she's really an elder on this path of doing the grid work. And so it feels amazing to have her here today. And we're going to talk about a few different things. One of the things that really sparked me when I was reading your bio, Raeline, was that you're an author, which I didn't know. And so I'm going to ask you about that as well. So firstly, I want to say welcome. It's beautiful to have you here. And I remember when you and I first met in person when we were in Giza, and we hugged, and it was just one of those hugs where you just know that you've been connected for so many lifetimes as well. And so that was really beautiful. So thank you for being with us today.
It's my absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me, ladies. I've been looking at your Beauty Way podcast, and I love the banter and the powwowing and the beautiful topics that you'll share. So thank you so much for this beautiful service that you're offering to us all. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
It's a pleasure. And, what we talk about for us, we love being human. We love being on earth. We love the human aspect of like what we came here to do and what we chose to do. And I feel like that is such an important part of you as a galactic midwife as well. In my experience of what we did when we were in Egypt was connecting with the essence of who we are, with our soul's essence, with lifetimes and different versions of ourselves, and bringing them here into this human, so we can be not only the most powerful human but the most beautiful human. And when I say the most beautiful human, that human that like is balanced and does walk the beauty way, knows the middle way, can see the polarities, and can see the amazing galactic aspects of who we are, but still just doesn't need to get away from being human.
Exactly. We've signed up for this human experience, and we're in it, as I say, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. And we're all of it. We've been it all, we've done it all, and it's time now to integrate our stories within the greater story. Not just of the living libraries of Gaia Galactica, but also within our cosmic and universal chronicles and histories. It's we have a rich tapestry, and there are patterns that interface with each other, perpetually as we're walking this path. And this is all heightened when we're in sacred power sites.
I would love to ask you as the first question, what was it that, you said that you've been doing these missions since 1991. What was it that guided you there in the first place, that you said, this is what I have to do, and you knew that this was going to be your path?
Well, I had been on a dark night of the soul, and integrating a lot around death, close family members dying. So integrating and even avoiding, as part of the initiatic rites of passage, into my own inner underworld. And for me, a lot of my work takes me into the underworld of myself and the planetary fields and the interrelationship with that. So I had that happen very young in life, which opened me up again psychically. I came in open and able to make predictions and interface dimensionally with other realms and other beings in other realms, particularly the Davic realm when I was younger. And this took me on an opening where I healed a lot of issues that I was avoiding through substance abuse, and had 3 near-death experiences as well, and had this roller coaster ride of ups and downs, and one minute being with all the street people, and then the next minute being with famous rock stars all around the world. And I knew that if you don't have a spiritual anchor in this world, you're screwed, basically. And so this opened me up, yet again, to really hold the anchor and work through some of the emotional blockages and traumas from childhood. And it really just, nature started speaking to me in ways that I remembered as a child. And then I realized that the dialogue was not just through the Davic realm, that the trees were helping me to anchor and to stabilize my frequency, to connect with other dimensional beings, particularly star beings. So it really springboarded very, very quickly when I, did the work relating to substance abuse, and just opened up this whole realm on a whole different level than what I had when I was a child. It was like once I was an adult, I was given more accountability and more stability, and if there's anything that I've learned in this world, it's that no one gets a golden ticket on getting out of accountability, and it really is that path that it's like telling me not to breathe now. It's when you find what you're here to not just receive, but also to deliver. And that is part of the midwifery part, that when you know who you are and what you're holding and what you're here to deliver, it accelerates and excites, all your cells and DNA.
It really does. And just when you were speaking then, I was recalling just our trip to Egypt and what I knew that it was going to offer to me. And Carissa and I have spoken about it in the previous podcast. And therefore I knew my intention was really powerful. And in setting that powerful intention, I had a really powerful experience. And I also don't, even though I've been on the path of initiation for some time, I didn't have, you spoke about the power of being together in sacred sites. And I don't know if I was fully aware of the gravity that it would have on my life when I returned, because of the powerful intention that I set when I was there. Like, of course it's going to have gravity, because it's all part of the same thing, and time isn't linear. And at the same time, those aspects of really letting ourselves delve into the underworld are so important when we go on these missions, because if we can't do that, we're going to get stuck in, well, this is just how I'm feeling, we're going to get stuck in other realms. Yes, because we can't actually bring it back here, and we can't embody the magnificence of who we've actually connected with, who we've had a taste of in these sacred sites. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that I understand it also is that when we, it's all about our capacity. And so when not just our physical body, but all of the layers of our being don't have the capacity to bring the codes in to the body and to shift and and what's the word I'm looking for? Not translate, but change into,
Transmute.
no, transmute's not quite the right word. It's like where it changes, the new aspects of light that are coming into our field. If we're not transmuting the dark at the same time, the shadow aspects, we're not going into the underworld in order to bring the light forward, then there isn't the capacity to integrate the codes. You literally can't bring it into your body. And the way that I see it with a lot of people when they're taking a lot in, like they're learning, they're doing all these things, but if they don't have the capacity to embody it, then it's like they're walking around with this field of codes that they can't actually bring into their cellular structure, and they can't actually walk it through their reality. And so we can only embody and integrate to the capacity that we have to allow the codes to settle into our body.
Absolutely. And it's really interesting because I was just writing this morning about these exact things. So I will probably, if that's okay, share some of the writing that came through this morning. That it's not new writing, but I woke up with the words, "It's always darkest before the dawn," and that self-actualization brings self-realization, and the whys are actualized. So, as I said, no one ascends by bypassing their own shadow self, and shadow mirrors by seeking out opponents to shadow box with. That's number one. And, in sacred sites, it will bring up all of this, and it's meant to. It's not that, and it does.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there smiling and relishing it all. And that's why I always say at the very first meeting, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, it's all going to come up, and honor it all, embrace it all, embrace your all, and as I say, we've been it all, we've done it all, no judgment. So in relation to sacred power sites, our innate systems are interfacing with the solar and stellar plasma more intently now on our planet. So we're perpetually live streaming. It's what I call going live at the Crystal Palace with all our higher gland centers, pituitary and pineal and hypothalamus. All these gland centers are coming on. So we're crystalline. Our skull is becoming like a transponder for interfacing and communicating. So yeah, our innate systems are interfacing now more innately with. They're perpetually live streaming, and our nervous system functions as consciousness streaming service. So the nervous system is actually regulating consciousness, and to what degree we can integrate or assimilate and absorb frequency, uploading and downloading, because within these dimensional realms where dimensional aspects of self are also trying to get through to us, and we're part of what I call the Council of Dimensional Councils, COUNS, councils of council.
Yeah.
So, and that's part of the nervous system function, and why people feel, so jarred and like they've got a jackhammer running through their body, because that's what's happening now. Because we're made up of the same elements of our earth, and she's going through this birthing process of, as I say, Gaia Galactica coming back into form, and we're transitioning. Well, nobody's in 3D anymore. No one. Okay, everybody's hovering between 4 and 5D, around 4.5. And recently, even more so with things like, when we talk about the underworld, we can see that the lower astral, the netting system that was placed over the lower astral has been dismantled now. And so we're able to communicate more freely with our higher selves and with our dimensional teams, which include us on other layers of dimensionality. So sacred sites organically operate as electromagnetic capacitors, and this is what you were talking about, the capacity. So they are capacitors, and in this way, we can upload and download within the frequencies and capacities of our personal and planetary interrelational dynamics, particularly of our unified heart fields.
So what you're saying is they open our capacity, and then like naturally by what they are, they open our capacity, and then we get to choose to meet that. Is that what you're saying? Did I understand?
Yeah, well, I don't even feel it's a free will deal on this level, because we've already decided what we want,
Yeah.
and the higher self, and working in with divine will. So it's like, the only thing is like the ego and the personality self will be kicking and screaming as they go along, trying to catch up with
Yeah.
what's happening. And that's the free will deal. That we have free will, but it's minute free will in comparison to divine will. So best we just kick along with the with the good stuff. And so this is continually being adjusted according to our ability to observe, detect in a sacred power site, decipher the information that's coming through frequency wise, and decode, because it's a living language. When we're in sacred power sites, it's a living language that we are learning to translate. So it's incredible what happens in sacred power sites. And if we allow ourselves to not be the doers in sacred power sites, and allow ourselves to be in what Aboriginals call dadiri, sacred listening, this is where we get to start to move into, which is a natural way, for Australian Aboriginals to be, is to observe nature, detect, then decipher, and then decode. Mm. And so sacred power sites naturally afford us the opportunities to do this with ease and grace, which we may not allow ourselves to do in our everyday life. Some of us are in beautiful positions where we afford ourselves opportunities to regularly be in nature as part of, not as a discipline, but just as an organic way of being. Mm. So what sacred power sites do is they open up the aperture. It's not that, the consciousness suddenly, well, it can suddenly change what I call, we can get assemblage point shifts, which is a drastic, where you may feel like you don't know if you're up or down. You have no vibrational reference points anymore. That can happen. And that did happen to me in Egypt many years ago in 2003, where for 3 months I had no vibrational reference points. Every time I tried to find something that was a comfort of way or a process to do, it wasn't fitting. And it sacred power sites can do that to us. Or, it's not that they do it to us, it's that we set up, as I said, this interaction with them, this relational dynamics, this synthesis that naturally allows this to occur. And also places that, like stargates, portals, they also have big capacity to shift this as well. And some of the process, in the process of that, some of it's very physical in the purge. It's not just airy fairy or light and something. It's very tangible when this occurs.
I would love to ask, for people that are not familiar with how it works or what it is that's happening. I feel like you've done a really good explanation of sort of what happens, but I would love you to describe your, I guess, interpretation or your experience of, firstly, what is it about a sacred site that gives the access to those things? And then secondly, how would you describe your experience of grid work? And I mean that from the sense of, if someone's listening to this podcast and this is the first time they're hearing of grid work, or they are familiar with sacred sites, but they don't really understand why it's different in a sacred site versus in my backyard or at the beach down the street? What is it that makes it different? And, you know, the image that I have is, you know, quantum technology and all different kinds of things, but I'm curious how you would describe that and how you would, yeah, I guess, give those people enough of an understanding to stay along with the conversation.
Everyone will have a different experience, and when we are in sacred power sites, no one is having your experience of you in that site, and no one is having your interrelational experience with the site. So that's the first thing to understand, to connect in with. So it doesn't matter what everybody else is saying or whatever. It's really important to stay with your own, to get the goods authentically. We have originator gates set up all over this planet, and they tie in with what's called the mind gate. And according to our capacity, in my experience, and it could be in a power forest in Poland, for example, which I wrote a book about power forests and trees and their councils. And basically what happens to me, and what has happened quite regularly when I go into a sacred power site, it's like a barcode system. Aboriginals, originally people know about this barcode system where you're scanning, but you also get scanned yourself. So this is why I say it's different for everyone, because according to your DNA, according to your cellular memory and your coding, according to your consciousness in that moment, you are scanned and are given information according to what you are able to assimilate and absorb in that moment. So this is a really powerful thing that happens. The ley lines or the song lines, they interface with each other, not just through the songs, but they interweave with each other. It's a real weaving, and there's a pattern. And if your DNA patterning, your mitochondria, this is why it's really important that we take care and protect our mitochondria, because these are our inner song lines. Our RNA is our inner song lines. So if we can comprehend how important that is, when we walk the land, when we walk the land, we remember, we put back the dismembered parts of self. But there are also greater, like we have our veins and then we have our arteries. So sacred power sites are the song lines that are like, you might call them dragon nodes or ley arteries, ley lines, ley arteries. These are a greater influx of energies through these that are set up when in the first inauguration or the coming into being of our planet as it was not just birth, but as it was intentionally designed, that this is all set up as part of the way we can stay connected through these originator gates. Okay, if we know this and we remember this, and if we approach with this mood and this manner, and we don't go in as the doer, but we go in and listen to what our higher self, our source code, in union with source, requires of us through this vessel, through this system that we have. In the organic, we have, our bodies are incredible, hold incredible technology. Incredible. We are stargates. We are interfacing continuously with this, and more are coming online now with consciously doing so. And I say more the merrier.
I want to say, because I know that there's people, some of our listeners are going to be listening to what you're saying, and they're like, their minds are going to be blown and they're not going to understand. So I want to say at this point that it's okay if you don't actually understand what Raylene's saying. She's been talking about source code. Your source code is hearing what she's saying and it's picking up on it. Just like you said a moment ago, of when we go into a sacred site and we're scanned and we'll receive what we're ready to receive. It's the same thing. You know, you can listen to this podcast today, and you then listen to it in a week's time, a month's time, or a year's time, and you'll pick up something different every time. And so I really want to just say that now. And the other thing that I felt to say when you were speaking then was, because I always love to bring it back to the embodiment of this human in this moment. And if you don't understand what sacred sites are or anything, just listen to what's being said in this conversation and bring your consciousness into your body on a daily basis and treat your body. That's what Raylene's saying. Our bodies are sacred. Start there. Bring more consciousness to your body, and the song lines of your body start looking after this human body that you've got, and you will naturally open more to sacred sites on earth and what's available there. So I just wanted to add that little piece for some of our listeners as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. I think that was really helpful. And I'll just add one other extra little piece to that is understanding via the intellect isn't what gives us the embodiment. And so to add on to what Kirsty just said is allowing yourself to not understand and receive it anyway allows the coding to start filtering into your system. And like Kirsty said, in a week something else might drop in, and it might not even be by listening again. It might just be you'll be out and about walking in nature, and all of a sudden there'll be like an understanding that will happen. And then you might naturally form an intellectual understanding to the degree in which we can as humans, which is limited comparatively to what is available. And it's okay not to get it here, and just allow it to be received here in the heart, for those that are listening and not watching my hands out of the head and into the heart.
And may I say that, decades ago when I was bringing information through, my information always comes from a galactic perspective, and then I have to translate it into this language here for Earth. Now, for years, people didn't understand what I was saying intellectually. However, they would write, I don't understand what you're saying, but I feel what you're saying in my body, and it's having an effect on me when I read the words. So I could be writing Baba Black Sheep or whatever on the words, but it's about reading between the lines vibrationally. And the thing with this stuff is you can't fake vibration. What comes through words or what comes out of people's mouths, if it's a vibrational match, then you'll get what you're ready for, no more, no less. And the downloads can come anywhere, and the light bulb moments, particularly for me in the shower or sitting on the loo, I get a lot of downloads. So it's not even while out in nature. It can be really in the simple everyday things that we're doing with our life. Doing the dishes, I get a lot of downloads. So it's that as well. It's taking that time, it's taking those moments of where you may not even be aware, where you're expanding your awareness and your consciousness to integrate, like sitting on the loo or under the shower, but you're taking that moment without even consciously realizing that that's what's occurring. But by saying this, you will become more aware. And it's like 11:11 and 100th monkey syndrome. It starts naturally once you hear it, and once you vibe with it, it starts naturally occurring for you as well. And now when I first started sharing on social media way back, it was like, it was so different. Like now everybody's getting the things that I'm sharing. But it didn't stop me, because I understood that it was important to share the frequency, as I say, reading between the lines. That's where a lot of the goods are.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like there's a lot of people that, and I've totally experienced this myself, of a lot of people try to, for lack of better term, like dumb down or like oversimplify something so that people understand. And I would love you to share, just from your own experience, what, I guess, some words of encouragement or inspirational wisdom to those, to speak to why it's important to share the message as it's coming through you, even if people are not understanding.
Well, for me, it's like telling me not to breathe. And I was living in India for over 4 years, and there's a famous pundit called Chanika Pundit, and one of his messages is hit very strongly with me, and that is that if you gain knowledge and hold on to it and not share, you soon become a miser and lose it. So for that alone, it's the impetus to the other impetus is, it only takes that one step to ground and alchemize for the whole. Not just for yourself, but grounding and alchemizing for the whole. So that's really important in sacred power sites as well, that we ground and alchemize for the whole according to capacity and what people are ready for. That we consider our humanity, we consider our earthly and stellar brethren, that we're all in this together, and we're all acting and sharing on behalf of the whole. This is this unified heart presence that naturally occurs when we're in sacred power sites. And that is source code, is staying in the heart as all is unveiled around us, and it could be a drama vortex, it could be a celestial portal opening, it could be all manner of things, but it's all perfect for that moment and divinely orchestrated in order to teach, and that's why I said earlier, no one's having our experience of us, so it must be an authentic path that we're walking, no matter what's going on around us, even if we're with half a dozen or 20 other people in a sacred power site, because self-actualization brings self-realization. The wise are actualized. So actualizing, not parroting, not following someone else, not taking information from a book. That's why I say these places are living libraries. And if you go sit with pen and paper, good old-fashioned pen and paper, and automatic write, you will receive so much information. If yourself, it's not that anyone, this is available to all of us now, and even more so because more are coming on board and showing that this is an innate ability. We have spiritual technology, as I was saying, inside us that is totally transducing information and assimilating information all the time.
There's so much what you're saying that I just want to delve into. I'm not going to. There's one thing that I wanted, that was really coming to me, and it was reflection upon a conversation we had recently. It was the last episode of our last season, which was with Magdalena about artificial intelligence. And the concepts that you're talking about are so similar to what we were talking about on that podcast, of our ability to connect in with the whole and to come from that place of source codex. And so if anyone's listening to this, I recommend that you go back and listen to that as well, because the one thing that I feel is the most important from what you're saying is the consciousness from which we interact and with which we interact with the whole. And when we are present with that consciousness, that's when we become aware of our natural connection to all that is, and also the ripple effect that we are having simply by taking that one step in relation to the consciousness of the whole. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and the whole thing with AI, it can only mimic or piggyback off the organic.
Yeah.
So why would you go for, you know, the artificial when you can go for the real deal, organic, source connected? Not, you know, and that's the whole thing with this, you know. True ego knows that it's part and parcel of the divine. You know, the organic knows that it is, you know, part of source. And the false ego and beings that would like to lord it over material and subtle energy dimensionally want to be worshipped and adored as a mediator or an in-between or a cutoff point where we can be held in holding patterns and frequency netting. So there's all this part of it too. So we are actually breaking free from that, and that is having an amazing influence on our entire universal time matrix. It's everything's changing with time. Everybody knows that times speed up. Everybody knows where those 4 hours go. Last minute it was 11:11, and next minute it's 4:44. And where did that time go in between? You know, so everyone's experiencing this, that days and weeks and months and years are not what they used to be. So that is very tangibly experienced through nature, and the nature of time on our planet and how it is evolving. You know, we go through galactic cycles, greater cycles of coming into consciousness and going out of consciousness as natural cycles. You know, in Vedic tradition in India, they call this the yugas, and there are 4 greater cycles. In Egyptian Cometian law, they have it as 5 cycles of the sun. So this is a natural process that's happening, you know, organically. But we are also, according to our capacity to move our consciousness into operating with divine will and source, as I say, accelerating everything as well now. You know, we don't have to come under the jurisdiction of planets and cycles when we're holding this. And so we can naturally be within this. But it is influencing time. It is influencing time matrices. It's influencing our consciousness. And yeah, more are coming on board, as I say, with this now. So it's very, very unique. It's almost like we've been given a dispensation within this cycle, and many are running with it. And there are beings on other dimensions, star beings, angelics, that are looking on in awe and wonder of what we are holding in these vehicles, in these bodies. You know, we're doing things that have never been done before, even within, you know, the ideas of Atlantean and Lemurian and Hyperborean constructs. We are doing it even more in awe-inspiring ways for beings in.
So we're back. We lost Raeline there for a second while she was mid awesome share. And so now we're back.
So yeah, I was just sharing that this happens quite frequently when I am discussing certain dimensionality, particularly with glitches and time shifts, and when I'm bringing through certain frequencies through my voice, the connections will drop out.
Yeah. And so I think, do you remember the exact point of what you were speaking to? Because I feel like you weren't quite finished the point yet.
She was talking about the angelics and other beings on other planets and other dimensions, how they are actually celebrating us right now.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes,
Yep.
yes.
And they're not just celebrating us, they're lining up to take birth here and do in like kind. Because it's so rare what's happening here, you know, and our Earth is like a showcase planet for what's not been done before through a physical body. You know, in Lemuria they were etheric bodies. In Atlantis it wasn't the body we have now. It's almost like, you know, this is not just an ascension process, it's a descension process, in that we are bringing all of ourselves, we're bringing the manna from heavens down through our vessels, and it's no mean feat. And that's why they're like, how are you doing that? You know, how are you able to do that? What's never been done in this way, you know, that's an evolutionary process. We're not here to just run around in circles with what was, and, you know, get back to the Atlantean or the Lemurian way. You know, we've done that. You know, we've been there, we've done that. We've got the T-shirt, you know, we've got the mug. We're doing it, you know, in another way, another octave up the spiral.
Totally. Yeah. I love that
down through that same spiral.
Totally. Yeah. I love that you've spoken to this, because I feel like in many kind of, I guess, groups or circles, there's this almost pedestaling of previous incarnations or previous iterations of civilizations, and that there's this kind of talk, like, even though there's the intention of something even kind of greater, there's always this kind of looking back. And I feel like, you know, there's obviously data that we can receive that gives us what's the word? Like, it gives us more data to move through this process in an even newer, fresher way, right? Because we've done it that way. We've got the T-shirt, as you said. And so we learn from the mistakes, and we learn from the things that did and didn't work. And so we have a greater capacity to go beyond. And I feel like just speaking to this piece is really beautiful, because there's also this perception that I notice of people that everything's going to shit right now. And this perception that, like, we're falling apart or we're breaking. And whilst I have my own ideas about that, just the idea of the perception that it's not exactly as it's meant to be, or that there's something wrong with it, or it's not as powerful as, or it's not as good as. And what you're sharing, just to me, just resonates with my perspective, which is we have to bring the unseen into the seen in order for it to alchemize and transmute and to turn into light, or to alchemize into light. And whilst anything is under the surface, we're running a false kind of clarity on what's actually happening, because it's not known. And so when we bring up the stuff, which happens to all of us in our own microcosm, in our own experience, it's like the planet has to do that. We have to bring all the underbelly, underground to the surface, so that it can be cleared, so that we can move and shift into something else. And I feel like this conversation just offers a little bit more kind of, what's the word, like, it's just a more for lack of a better word, positive perspective on what it's offering us, as opposed to that there's something wrong. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in Atlantean times, we took ourselves into the extremes of what it is to be in a heavenly state here on the planet, but also into the darker steps of what we're capable of as well when we're not source connected.
Yeah.
And so that's a great learning curve of, you know, not to go down that road and being pulled into drama vortexes as they unfold. And we're seeing this on the world stage, where, you know, this happens at the end of every end times. Everything comes up in everyone's face, and, you know, personally and planetary, and it's necessary. And I'm like, because, you know, yeah, when we're not remaining comfortable just yet, you know. And as I say, no one gets that golden ticket of getting out of accountability. And, you know, I love the film Willy Wonka, particularly the Gene Wilder version. And, you know, everyone goes there, they've got their golden ticket, and boy, do they they get taken on that roller coaster ride into their own personal underworlds. And this is a necessary, you know, it's like the hero's journey. You know, this is a necessary part of initiatic rites of passage for being on the earth. You know, our underworld, our inner underworld, is our unconscious and our subconscious running rampant, you know, unchecked. And so we can see that that's what's going on, you know, right in our faces. And it's really important to remain the observer, bear witness to it all, not being pulled into the drama vortexes. None of that drama is in nature. Stay in nature. Often.
Yeah. Carissa, when Raeline dropped out, you and I were saying that we both had things that we wanted to ask her. Was there anything else that you wanted to reflect on or ask?
No, that was the reflection piece that I just shared. Yeah.
Because something that that I really felt pulsed to ask you about before, I know I had heard you mention that you did a scuba diving course because you wanted to do grid work under the oceans. And I really wanted to ask about the oceans right now. And I think one of the reasons why I felt so connected to you was because of your connection to the whales. And we had our journey to Egypt was connected to the whales as well. And so I just want to ask you, there's no specific question, but what can you share with us about, because you always talk about oceanic consciousness, what can you share about the oceans right now that they want us to know, or that's important for us to share now?
Well, the first thing I'll say is you've got to go in to get out. And I was scared to put my head underwater. I could swim beautifully, and, you know, had won ribbons and what have you for swimming competitions, but couldn't put my head under the water. And when the tsunami hit in Thailand, I was laid out in bed with double pneumonia and pleurisy, my hands and my feet on fire, and I got shown all these temples in under the oceans, and there's 12 of them. And so I teach this dolphin dreaming temples of Lemuria and the starry whale palaces of the whales of Lemuria. And so this started me off on a journey where I was shown all these underwater grids, and it's like, well, how am I going to do that? It's like, well, scuba diving, of course. It's like, thanks. But because, you know, you give me a task when it comes to grid work, and it's like, I can't say no. So I learned to scuba dive, and so I was shown all these underwater cross points of the vortexes, that it's like when you don't put a jar on properly and it's not screwed on properly and it's warped. So sometimes, you know, that involves physical purging through your regulator. So all the fish come around and chum off literally your vomit. So I have to stay there until that goes back into a natural vortex spin. So that's part of what I've been shown to work with. I've also been shown how, you've got to go in to get out. A lot of the ancient cultures on our planet, for instance, in Egypt and in Aboriginal, we have starry canoes, we have the waka in Maori culture, and these are boats or vessels that we traverse through the underworld to get back to the stars. And so for me, underworld initiations are a lot more gentler through connection with whales and dolphins in the ocean. And this is how we can move through what I call catastrophobia, where land masses have sunk and tsunamis and all this stuff that we're carrying in our cellular memory to do with catastrophes on our planet, where when we get to a certain frequency, again, when we get to hit that frequency band, that we have all the PTSD come up about different catastrophobias we may have experienced in different lifetimes. And so the oceanic consciousness and working with whales and dolphins is a way for us to stabilize our emotional body and our fields and forms while we work through that. They say, come down with us. It's deep, it's dark, yet 80% of our planet is water. Your bodies are water. You're in the embryonic fluid, when you're born. This is natural for you to be in this amniotic fluid. This is natural for us to be down here breathing this liquid light. And come with us. We'll help you work through the stuff that's in the unconscious and the subconscious through play, through our heartfelt joy and our innocence. It is the inner child that has the key that opens the doors to the inner realms. And so, as I say, as the frequency netting that has had us trapped within the 4D lower astral levels, as that starts to release, we connect again with all these beautiful mythical realms and beings like water dragons and mer people and all these amazing beings that are part of our patterning, our consciousness patterning. And the ocean helps us to, it's expansive consciousness. Oceanic consciousness means expansive consciousness and being within the frequency patterning of expansive consciousness.
Amazing.
Yeah, so beautiful. I'd love to ask just a question reflecting back to where you spoke about the jar with the lid that wasn't screwed on correctly. Just so that I understood what you were saying, were you saying that is the grid work that you were doing whilst you were in, like when you go in? And so are you working at the planetary level to kind of correct the I don't know how to call it.
Screw the lid back on.
Screw the lid on. Yeah, okay. And so that helps with the stabilization of the planetary ascension.
Yeah, it's like a spinning top. The toys, those old-fashioned toys, and as they start to wind down or release their spin. That we all have an inner spin path. This is where quantum physics is really helping us to understand our innate or spiritual technologies, is that, it starts to wobble or warp. So because of things that have happened with catastrophobias, some of these grids are warped.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's very deep and I won't go into more stuff about that, but that's a very simple analogy of what's happening. The jar and the spinning top is how it can happen. And that particular one was in the Galapagos Islands. It's happened a few times, but there are places within our oceans that have incredible connections to the galactic highways. So this is the oceanic consciousness, and one of my names is Kitiyanka, which means she who is of the oceanic stars, and it is a part of a dimensional facet of myself that knows how to work at this capacity, and you know, we're bringing in different parts of ourselves as a team. That, you know, a lot of these dimensional beings that people are connecting with, they're not realizing that it's them. So what, you know, when we connect in and we understand what we're holding and what we're connected to all the time, it's not like we have to go somewhere to a higher dimension. It's not a geographical, and it's not something outside of ourselves. You know, we start to see the unified presence of everything within and around us, planetary and cosmically.
And when you're talking about that, when you spoke about, you know, when you get to those points and you have to have a physical purge, to me, it's the indication that none of it is separate. You know, like you said, Carissa, before, is we can't get this with the intelligence. We actually have to feel it and let the energy flow in our body. And the oceanic consciousness, to me as well, is about allowing that energy to flow through our body, the emotion, and letting ourselves continually purge the old stories which are related, the emotions that are related to old stories, and we're clearing out, letting the light in. And this is all part of it, and then we can do the jar up properly again.
Yeah,
and more leakage.
it's the integration of emotional fragmentation.
Oh,
You
I
know,
love that. Yeah.
through childhood traumas, and also from other lifetimes, for want of a better word, and yeah, even galactic wars, all sorts of stuff can have us be triggered. You know, and brought up from the unconscious to the conscious, so that we can work with it consciously. You know, it's not that we always have to go through a purge, and not that every time I dive for the work that happens. Sometimes it's very beautiful with the dolphins, where they just encircle and spin around you, and you know, they always work through the peripheral, and then they'll hit you with sonar, and your whole body's upgraded in the blink of an eye. And things like night dives with manta rays, and I am purging at the bottom, and there's, you know, it's quite rough, and we really shouldn't have been out, and we were on the bottom. You know, this was in Hawaii, and I have this big fully pregnant mama manta ray come right over my nose like 7 times, and I'm there purging out of my regulator, and surrounded by a garden of sea urchins, spiky sea urchins, and being thrown around by the currents, even though I was on the bottom. It was really rough on the top, and purging the whole while. And here I am thinking, I'm going to get this amazing spiritual message from her. What have you got to tell me? And she just said, don't eat garlic before you dive. So I don't eat garlic before I dive anymore.
So funny.
That is such a perfect place, I think, for us to complete today.
Cool.
Well, I missed what you just said.
She was a practical mama.
Yeah. Don't eat garlic before you dive. That is the main takeaway for today.
Yeah, because I was like, garlic breath,
yeah.
but it wasn't helping.
So good.
Before you dive.
It's great. I love it.
So great. Yeah, as I said, I just feel like that's the perfect place for us to complete today. I feel like we've gone full circle, and yeah, I'm really think it's been awesome. I think this conversation has been so awesome at so many different levels. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing
Pleasure.
wisdom. And thank you for, you know, doing the work for as long as you have, because it's people like you that have like held the line so that more and more can now do what they're doing. And, you know, I personally am super appreciative of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's,
Me too.
I mean, there's so much going on, and this year's a super duper doozy. So if anyone feels to go to Sacred Power sites, you're feeling the call and you've been feeling the pull for quite a while, all that's ever required is to show up, heed the call. And as I say, it's not an elitist thing. It's just that many are called, but very few heed the call. So if you're feeling called, show up. And you know, and some places you're required to show up and come again and again, you know, for different layers of. So it's like I'm going to Angkor for the equinox alignment with Angkor Wat's Grand Central Tower in the sunrise on the equinox coming up in 3 weeks. And I went there in 2009, and there's another layer of that gateway, you know, that galactic gateway that's opening, that's being shown it's ready. And that's through what we were doing in Uluru, what was done in Bali, and what was done in Egypt. So
and with that trip, at the time that this podcast will be released, that trip will probably be about 2 weeks away. So if you want to have a spontaneous trip to Cambodia, get in touch with Raeline.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today, Raeline.
Oh, pleasure.
Thanks
you,
everyone,
and thank you for providing such a beautiful, you know, platform or space for us to get together like this and yeah, share.
Thanks, honey.
Share and powwow.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a part.
Thank you.